Hi, welcome to Aging Loved Ones, the Healing House. I have with me Duke Morton. He's going to tell us all about his story of taking care of his parents. Hi, Duke. How are
Oh,
you?
hey, I'm great. I'm great. This is very exciting. Your first podcast here. That's very cool. Yeah, and it's such a great idea. Everyone I talk to that is in our age group is dealing with the same thing, with dealing with aging parents. And they either don't want to think about it, or they are thinking about it, or are going through it. And it's just seems to be universal. And I didn't realize, of course, when me and my sisters, knew our parents were aging, and eventually we would have to deal with taking care of them when they were older. But we had no idea what that was going to look like, or what we were going to do. And of course, it's something you don't want to think about. So we just wouldn't think about it. It's like, oh yeah, someday, okay. And then it suddenly is on you, and there you go. Circumstances happen, and you just deal with it as it comes. My parents happen to be ailing slowly, so it's something we knew we would have to get into with the trained nurse and have medical help. My mom, Parkinson's, that was for a long time kept under control with medication, but it was always understood that the medication only lasts, I guess, what is it, 20 years or something, a couple of decades. And then eventually it stops having effect and you start going downhill. My dad had a series of minor strokes when he was in his 50s. 50s and 60s, but nothing serious. So we didn't realize that he would be going into dementia in his final couple of years. But we did know about my mom, so we knew that we would need some medical care, and we knew that they at some point would not be able to be on their own all the time. And of course, they want independence. I mean, we all do. So we just didn't know when the time was going to happen, or where I have two sisters. I'm the eldest, and we of course had no idea where we'd be in our own lives when this happened. As it turned out, my parents downsized from their large house that we had spent most of our lives in. My baby sister had grown up in the house. It was time to get rid of that, so we sold that house, and they moved into a senior mobile home park, which is actually very, very nice. And we find out now it's very desirable to be. It's one of the desirable parks, which is really nice. And they could still be on their own, but it was in a size. It was a three bedroom, two bath, which was a square footage that they could feel comfortable in. It was large enough to feel comfortable, but small enough that they could take care of it themselves. And they were there on their own for a number of years. One of our sisters lived a couple of miles away, just up the freeway. So there was somebody nearby for them. In addition to which, at that point, both of their grandkids were in the area too. So it worked out very well. Their health was going down. They were both in walkers, but they were still getting around and could do things for themselves. They didn't need full-time care. But then as my mom's Parkinson's progressed and my dad started getting dementia, their days of living purely on their own were numbered, and we didn't really know what we were going to do. There was not enough money to have. Live-in caregiving is very expensive. They needed somebody that was going to be there all the time, not just somebody to stop in. And at that point, luckily, I was in between jobs. I was in film production, and our production company had shut down, and I was burned out and taking time off anyway. And I just seemed the natural person to go and stay with them and be their caregiver. So the timing just happened to work out perfectly. And they certainly had space for me. And that's how that worked out. But it wasn't something that we could plan. It just happened that way. And I had visited actually earlier in that year and had left. And it was a few months later that they ended up really not being able to take care of themselves. And my sister said, "What are we going to do?" I said, "Hey, I had just been up there visiting them." And I said, "Okay, I'll move in." And that was not something that I dreaded. I actually had wanted that a few years earlier because I have been working with Gwen for many decades here, and we had been good friends, and I do graphic design work as well. And I had redesigned the cover of one of her books, The Healing House. And there we go. And there it is. Do we want to press stop on this since there's somebody at your door?
No.
Oh, okay. Then we won't. At any rate, I had read that book, and it's a wonderful book, and it's available on Amazon. it put it in my head, like, I would love to have that experience with my parents before they go. Because as you get older, of course, you're adult children and you move away and you have your lives. And there are always unresolved issues and things left unsaid. And I'd been through with a number of my friends, whose parents had died and they had never reconciled. They had never put the time in, and they always had regrets. And so for the rest of their time, they regretted, oh, if only I had done, if only I'd spent more time. Yada, yada. And I had worked on Gwen's book, redesigning it and doing the new edition, and thought, wow, I really want to have that time with my parents. I want to have that experience that she describes so beautifully in the book. And so that was a few years earlier. And so when this came up, I was like, oh, this is my time now to spend the quality time with my parents towards the end of their lives. And who knows how much, when I moved in, I had no idea how much time they had left. But I really did it with purpose. It was not some drudgery. I knew what I was getting into, and I knew the kind of care they needed. And I had help with, my sisters were around close by, and they were with a good health plan at Kaiser. And so I could interface with the Kaiser nurses, but I would be there full time and get a chance to reconnect with them. And of course, being, you're an adult, but you're also a child, and everything comes back up that I had forgotten about so much of the dynamic. All right, so here we are, where I was moving in with my parents, and I had read Gwen's wonderful book, The Healing House, which led to this podcast, of course. I had wanted that experience. So when I was called on when I decided to move in with my parents, I did it with purpose rather than, as so often happens, like, oh, well, I'm the one, especially if you have siblings. There's one sibling that it all falls on to do everything. But I was happily with my sisters, we were all united. We wanted to take care of our parents. So I didn't feel like I was doing it alone. And I wanted to spend that time with them. And I had no prior commitments, which is fortunate. So I moved in, and as I was saying before, it brings up all the things when you grow up, you would forget about so many things I'd forgotten about, just the dynamic with my parents, and you fall into old patterns, old worn out patterns, and they react to you initially as if you are decades younger. And, there's all of that readjustment that goes on with everybody and their parents when you're adult children and you move back in with them. I have a friend right now that has downsized and moved back in with his parents and is going through the same thing. And I'm like, oh, yes. Yeah, it takes some adjustment. But ultimately, it's really wonderful, especially if you do it with purpose. My purpose was to really heal old wounds and not leave things unsaid. And it was definitely rough, but really rewarding. And as it turned out, my dad only had like 9 more months to live, and we didn't know that when I moved in. And those 9 months were really wonderful. We reconnected. We sort of came to grips with our differences, and he had advancing dementia at that point, but luckily it was not bad. He was actually very upbeat, and he had some holes in his memory as far as things that happened in his life, but he could remember everything, faces and personalities, and you could have discussions with him, and it was all very positive. And really, he had previously been very troubled and a very negative person. Once he had the dementia, and as the time went on, he really became more positive and saw the bright side of everything, and it was really, really wonderful. We just ended up with a really great relationship at the end, and ended on an upbeat note, which is more than you can ask for, because you certainly can't plan that. And that was just really very rewarding. So I certainly got what I wanted with my father and with my mother as well. She was going downhill, but she lasted, gosh, how many more years was that? That was 7 more years I was doing this. I went into it with the mindset that it's open-ended, that I would simply be there as long as it took. And it ended up taking 7 years with my mom. So that was a big chunk of my there, but it was great. It was what was needed to be done, and certainly in my life and in her life, and my sister's as well. My youngest sister ended up moving in with us, luckily, for my own sanity. Having someone else there is paramount. She moved in with my dad gone, so we had space for her, and also it helps because when you're elderly man, it just works better if you have men around taking care of you. I certainly was doing all the work with my mom. I was there alone with her, doing it all myself
for a number of months before my sister moved in, but it just took a load off having another woman there to interact with. So there's also that dynamic. I certainly could have done it myself, but just the physical labor I could do. Emotionally, I was drained at that point because I had been taking care of both my father and my mother at the same time, basically alone. And boy, I was at the end of my rope emotionally. So it was fortunate that my little sister could move in with us at that point. And then we kept going for, I guess, once she moved in, we had another 5 years. And that was, wonderful, grueling, as my mom's health went downhill and she became bedridden. But it was also rewarding, not only with my mom, but also me and my little sister got to bond again and spend time together, live together. We had always, interestingly, through the decades, when each of us was in between apartments, we always contemplated, we should get an apartment together. And we would look at places and it just wouldn't work out and our lives would go in different directions. So that was also sort of a bonus, was we got to actually share a living space together after all these decades. And also take care of my mom, it was a load. That was really grueling. And we were both, by the end, we were both ground into a fine powder, as I like to say. But again, it was a really rewarding experience. And we had wonderful, they were with Kaiser, and we brought in hospice towards the end. People, ironically, and we had sort of thought as well, as a hospice is something you do right before you're dying. And instead, it's not. You bring them in earlier and they can help take the load off just with medical care visits and just emotionally and physical therapy and all sorts of things. And we were sort of sorry that we had not done that with my dad sooner. But we got hospice in to help both me and my sister out for the last couple of years. It was about 2 years that they were there. And then, of course, they were there at the end as well, which is they're just amazing, an amazing organization. So, yes, it was quite a journey and very rewarding and the hardest work you will ever do. I have worked in film production, and both of my sister works for a large tech company, and both of us are, there's grueling hours and emotionally taxing, but this is by far the hardest work you will ever do, not just physically, but just emotionally, because it's your parents, and so there's the whole emotional aspect of it as well, and you don't know that until you go through it. You can describe it to people, but it's like, wow, unless the people that have been through it know, and those that don't are in awe, but like, wow, you'll just never know until you do it yourself. But it was great. I mean, both me and my sisters are happy that we had that experience with them. And it was great to let go emotionally for me. I was there purposely doing the work emotionally while all of this was going on. My sisters have some residual stuff that they did not choose to really dive into, but I was there, boy, in the guts, in the trenches. I wanted get it all out and have nothing left unsaid and come to terms with things from the past. And I feel really good, after recovering from the grueling physical work and emotional work. It's very freeing now that to know that you've put in the time. I put in the time. We had a great outcome. They are gone, and now I'm moving on with my life, and I feel very free because of that. There's really none of that left over, nothing left unsaid or unfinished. And we certainly all put in the time, and so we don't feel like, if only I had ... It's like we did everything. And that's really rewarding, and it's chronicled so beautifully in Gwen's book. And that inspired me to take my own journey, and I hope it inspires all of you as well, whatever stage you are in your life, or if you have this coming up. There's wonderful help out there too. It's not just all, what do I do? There are people that know what to do, but there always has to be a point person there with the parents all the time. And a lot of people also are lucky where their parents are in good health, and they age naturally and pass away. It certainly doesn't have to be as grueling with disease, advancing diseases. Anyway, that's there you go. That's the story.
Good, wonderful, thank you. Yes, I didn't want to interrupt you. I wanted to just let it flow.
Let it flow. You said to let it flow. There you go. It all flowed out there.
So it sounds like you did a lot of emotional healing, mental healing on your relationship with your parents. Can you just talk a little bit about how you did that? What significant emotional things came up for you that you were able to clear? How did anything around that?
Yeah, okay. So, different with each parent. I'll start with my father first because, fathers and sons. mothers and daughters, fathers and sons. Those are the more difficult of the two relationships. So, the typical things of the father, my father wanting my life to go in one way and me wanting it to go in a different direction. I mean, this happens with so many people. It's such a universal theme. And I did my best early on. I was very motivated towards the arts. Both of my parents were both very artistic in dance and music. We grew up in a house full of theater and film and music, and always, from the time we were very little. And both my parents were both ballroom dancers and worked for Arthur Murray. So we grew up in a house with the arts, and both me and I have one sister that's 2.5 years younger, and then I have another sister that is 11 years younger. So the sister I grew up with in my early years, I just had the one sister, and we both were involved in the arts. And, I always tell people my mom was so driven to have us determined that we were going to have a career. It was a happy accident that we both ended up enjoying being in the arts, and we both actually had talent for it, because it could have been much, much worse. So we ended up being very driven and growing up in it. And my father had, sadly, both of my parents just suffered lots of abuse as kids, and we didn't realize that until we got to be adults and did some digging, because they would never talk about it. They were of the generation where you didn't talk about those things, and there's that whole background, which affected their outlook on life. And my father, interestingly, was supportive when we were young in the arts, and then we both wanted to go into it professionally, which neither of them seemed to be interested in. It was sort of perplexing that why would you want to go do this? Like, well, we knew this from birth, and you trained us for it, and now suddenly there's no support for this professionally. So there was always some. My father at that point had built up a very successful business, retail business, and just assumed that, as most parents, you find this a lot in the restaurant business too, where the parents just assume the kids are going to grow up in the business and they're going to take it over. So I did my best to connect with him on that level, although it just really was not at all an interest for me. And I was still trying to pursue going to school and pursuing the arts and trying to fit into the family business, which, you're never going to achieve that, all of it. But I did my best for many decades. And my father, I didn't find out until he had dementia and I came back that he actually was a very talented musician and was never given the chance to pursue that, and was forced again into the family business, which his family business was dry cleaning. And his father had a very successful dry cleaning business and expected that my dad was going to go into that. And so he was a very talented trumpet player and had wanted to pursue that, but then gave up those dreams and knuckled under. And so the expectation I find now, and this was the last 9 months of his life, reconnecting with him, I found out he actually was a very, very talented musician and was forced to give that up. And so he just assumed that I would, that's just what happens, is that you give up your dreams and you knuckle under and fight it out and then die. You do it until you die. Very, very depressing, very negative worldview, which I find he came from his parents, and he was abused as a child, and all of that came out. And of course, I never found any of that out until the last 9 months of his life. I was like, wow, the dementia actually sort of took away those layers that he had labored under for decades, poor man, and released this really super creative guy he always had a great sense of humor, which occasionally would come out. And it would come out of left field and go, oh, that's funny. What's that? He's usually angry and militant. And then this humor would come out. And then I found out, once he got dementia and released all the anger, so really he has a wonderful sense of humor, super talented trumpet player, very artistic. It answers so many questions that me and my sisters grew up with the arts. That's why we grew up with it, because part of him, was not able, he wouldn't let himself pursue it and was never, never allowed to pursue that. So some fragment of it came down to us, and it was all very mutated and very frustrating. And each of us eventually went our own ways and left, did not go into the family business. And I went into, my sister and I did ballroom dancing when we were younger and performed for a number of years. And then after that, I went into the film production, moved away and went into film production in Los Angeles for a number of decades. And so all of it, you move away as an adult, and things are left unresolved and misunderstood. My father, once he retired, tried to reestablish connections with me, and luckily, with the work I had done with a wonderful therapist, Gwen here, who knows me inside and out, many decades. Luckily, I had done this sort of work on that. So when he was willing to open up and try to reconnect with me, I was willing to do that as well on my end. And that's another thing that I see happen with a lot of adult children, where they don't, when the parents they get older and they want to reach out, the children slap them down because they haven't done their side of the work to let go of all of that old animosity, which I always find is so bad, so sad, because it's missed opportunities, and then the parents die, and then the kids are left. The kids are going, if only I had ... So luckily I'd done my homework beforehand. So when my dad got older and he was reaching out to me, I was willing to, I was in a space where I could open up to him and appreciate that. And that was a couple of decades before he had retired, a couple of decades before he had dementia and I moved in with him. So that's the backstory to when I came to live with them and take care of them. We had already opened up to each other, but there was a lot of stuff still left unsaid and undone. And because of his dementia, he had released a lot of the negative aspects of his personality, and was very positive and was so overjoyed every day that I was there with him. And he told me that. I still tear up around that. Every single morning that he woke up, he would tell me, "It is so wonderful to have you here," and give me a big hug. I'm like, wow. If only we all could have had that growing up. What a different life we all would have had. But, poor guy, he was so neglected and abused as a kid. He just could not get through life any other way. He didn't know any other way to live. And anyway, so it was the last 9 months were consequently really, really uplifting and really joyful, and such a great way to leave things. It doesn't make up for everything that was done to us early, but it certainly does leave it on a positive note and an understanding of him and what could have been with his life. It just is very sad. I feel very sad, because here was this really positive, funny, creative guy that was just beaten down by his upbringing, and just worked through his life as well as he could. That's the other thing too that I think comes through, and we always talk about that, me and my sisters, is that underneath all of the crap they really did not know how to have a happy life, because their parents didn't know how to, but they wanted us to be happy. I am so happy in my life right now, and it's sort of sad knowing what they wanted for us, not to be a part of that. My life has really turned a corner and is going so well now, and they didn't get to see that, and that is painful. We left everything on such a positive note when they died, but they weren't really able to see the further transformations, at least in my life. So that's something that you can't, it's just what it is. But certainly I had done enough work on my own when they were alive, before I moved in with them, that when I moved in, I was at a space where I could open up to them and see where they could meet, if they could meet me at the same level in their lives. And my dad certainly could. And my mom did her best. It was rougher with her, but we left it on a good note as well. So there you go. So that's more of the backstory. I don't know, do with it what you will, but you certainly can't go wrong with dealing with your own side of all of the hurt and pains growing up. Even if your parents never meet you at the same level, you can't go wrong doing that work for yourself, just for your own life. And then if you have then if you choose to do this with your parents towards the end of their lives, it puts you in a better space. If they decide to open up, you're able to receive that and build something new.
Yes, and it's wonderful that you got a sense of compassion for your father.
Yes.
That you didn't have as a child, because as an adult, it's like being able to really get the whole story and meet him where he lives in his heart when he's passing away, when all the personality stuff is not important anymore.
Exactly.
It's like that makes such a bond for the two of you. And your sense of yourself as a man.
Yes.
And like you said,
Yes.
fathers and sons, it's like often a son kind of takes the pride from his father, but it's
Yes.
like, it just sounds like so valuable for you to have done that.
I cannot tell you how valuable it was, because there was such, growing up with such animosity and such just not understanding. He didn't understand what I was doing with my life at all. And he tried to, even after he retired, he tried to understand, but he just didn't get it. And when he was those last few months, he really did get what I was doing. I'm a graphic designer as well, and I was getting my business started then after I had left the film business. And he really was such a so motivated and so involved in my life and really encouraging, and it's really changed my whole outlook on it, put everything in perspective that we had all gone through, all of us went through with my father growing up. It put everything in perspective, and I could really see. And also, we all learned more about both of my parents' pasts and their super dysfunctional families, and seeing how that played out in each of my parents' lives and the choices they made, which is, it's all very sad, but very uplifting in the end, because we got to reconnect and have a new understanding of each other.
Yes, and you got to heal these old patterns.
Oh, yes. Lots of healing.
And when I lived with my father for 4
Yes.
years, I found out things that I had no idea
Exactly.
about.
Exactly.
It just makes such a rich relationship with your
Yes,
parents.
much richer than you would be able to when you're younger, because they're busy raising you as well, and now you're both adults and you just both have your lives.
Yes. So the emotional healing is so important here.
So
because
important. Yes.
I worked with people for 45 years,
Yes.
and
Yes.
so many people are bringing up issues from their childhood,
Yes.
issues with their parents.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you were able to work that through. It's like this was worth 20 years of therapy.
Oh, definitely, because I'm working it through with them right there. And I wasn't just visiting occasionally. I was there with that. I mean, that's the other thing, too, that I really should emphasize, is being there with them 24 hours a day and physically taking care of them. Just the physical act of taking care of them brings up things and allows more healing to go on. And learning about them. Yes, and learning about their personalities as adults, and learning more about their pasts and what led to different choices and how they feel about that, and the regrets they have, because they had lots of regrets at the end of their lives. And having seen that with a number of my teachers at the end of their lives, and listening, old people tell young people all the time, listen to what I'm telling you, you will regret this if you don't do this. Most, you're young. Oh, that's never going to happen to me. I actually listened to what people were saying, and I was like, for many decades before any of this was possible, like, wow, I don't want to get to the end of my life and have all of these regrets and be, if only I had done ... Not only just with my parents, but just in general. So it's listening to my parents' stories and understanding them and getting to this place now. I'm definitely in the final third of my life now. And I've done all of this work, and I have all this understanding of my parents and their past and how their lives played out and what the regrets they had. And I don't have those regrets, and that is a huge load. That is a huge load off. And there aren't many of us that can say that, let me tell you.
Were there specific things that you did to help you relieve the stress? Did exercise, yoga, meditation? What things did you go to nurture yourself as a caretaker?
Yes, definitely. I had a very strong meditation practice through the work I'd done with Gwen for many decades. And even after I was not seeing her professionally, just pointing me in the direction of different teachers and different healers, different meditation practices. So I had a very strong meditation practice, which has carried me through many, many phases of my life. I cannot stress how much that is so important. So I was meditating. I knew also, and this is something else that I knew when I went in, I'm like, oh, this is the time I can really focus on my healing and my meditation, because it will take everything that I have in order to deal with their personalities as an adult and get through all of it, because it has to be done no matter how I feel or how exhausted I am. I'm the guy. So the meditation, definitely multiple times a day to relieve the stress and recenter myself and not absorb whatever they're throwing at me, because they're aside from everything else, they're also in physical pain. And They aren't able to be mobile, and there's all those frustrations. And so it's just going to come out on anybody that was there. So I knew going in that was going to be I was really going to have to rely on that, which I did. And then also going to the gym regularly. And my dad was into keeping himself fit as well, as much as he could. So we had exercise equipment in the house as well, which I used. So both of those things to stay grounded in my body and relieve the stress and get rid of people's energy that was being thrown at me right and left. And just stay the course. That's really how I did it.
Did you have time off? Like, did your sisters give you a night off?
Yeah, and that's a good thing. They did. I would get occasionally I get a full day off. I would get an afternoon off maybe 2 times a week. They did as much as they could, certainly. They felt really bad and wanted to come, but they just couldn't. They both worked full time, and they just was not able to do as much as they would like to have. But I did get time off, and on my time off I would get out of the area. On my days off, I would take public transit into San Francisco and just be in a different environment, just to refresh my whole being. Be out in nature, go doing walks around. Luckily, the area they lived in, their mobile home complex, was in a really beautiful area, so there were lots of paths to go and jog on and be around nature. So yes, it was definitely very important. Self-care, well, what they call now self-care, is really, really important, and I cannot stress it enough, especially going into that high stress round the clock. You have to be able to let go.
And what are some of the changes in you that you've noticed since this happened?
Since tremendous changes just in my life. Being able to let go of expectations and disappointments, feeling that, disappointments that somehow in the back of your mind, your parents are disappointed with you for decades, no matter what you do. Well, they would rather me do this, and now I'm doing this instead. And no matter how positive, the experiences are in your life, there's always that nagging in the back. And it's so refreshing to expose that, come to grips with them alive, and work through it with them and release it. And I don't carry any of that with me anymore. It's very, very refreshing. And I did not realize, I think most people don't realize how much of that is still hanging around, even though you're an adult. Just the thought, and sometimes it's like your parents aren't even really disappointed in you, but you think that from them. And just being able to be around them and come and have a dialogue about that with them just relieves so much. I mean, it's just changed my life. Truly life-changing.
Yes, and you even changed your name.
Yes, I did change my name, and that became and that's not just my parents. That is both families. Just lots and lots of baggage of abuse and dysfunction and substance abuse, and just a lot of baggage that I decided. Professionally, I changed my name a while ago in my design business before they were dead. And then as the years went by that I was taking care of them, I decided, once they're gone, I am transformed, and I just am going to use a new name and not carry the weight that the old family name carries with it. I didn't want that. But I did actually take a variation of the name I was given. I was named for my great-grandfather, who my father admired greatly. And so I was like, well, I won't stray completely off the message, but I'll just do a variation of our shared name. So that's Duke Morton comes from that. My great-grandfather was Marmaduke. And happily, my parents did not saddle me with Marmaduke growing up. But they wanted an M name. My father wanted the same initials. MMB. So Marmaduke, I was like, well, I'm not going to be Marmaduke. So what, a nickname of his was Duke, Marmaduke, Duke. So I'll be Duke, and our shared middle name of Morton. So Duke Morton. So that's what I go by now, and I'm changing it legally. But I'd gone by it professionally in my design business for a few years. So it wasn't. But yes, everybody knows me now as Duke Morton, except for old friends like Gwen, and my family still calls me by my old name, which of course they're allowed to. But yeah, really, it came to really symbolize the changes I'd been through and all of the things that I'd let go, all of the family issues that I'd let go of. I was like, yeah, I need a refresh. I am refreshed inside. I need a refresh.
Yes, you even had to change your facial recognition, you told me,
yes,
on your phone.
Yes, now that is I'm happy. I forgot about that. I had, of course, the physical changes you go through when you are caregiving, and the stress eating, of course, everyone knows about. I grew up dancing, so I'm always and I surf, and so I'm very aware of my body and my physical condition. It was just so grueling living there. I gave myself a pass. I did start gaining slowly, very slowly, gained stress weight. And after 7 years, I had put on a number of pounds. And after my mom was gone, I turned 60, and my doctor did blood work and said, well, I knew I was overweight and I needed to drop all of it. But he said, yes, you are also pre-diabetic. I was like, oh, no, this is not the path I'm going down. I'm starting my 60s. This isn't the way it's going to be. And he said, if I got back in the exercise, corrected my diet, and dropped the weight, I could probably do it all without drugs. I was like, no, I don't want to be on diabetes drugs. That's not the path. So yes, so I dropped a dramatic amount of weight. I dropped almost 50 pounds. It changed the shape of it, changed to the point that my iPhone it would not unlock because it seriously did not recognize me. People say, oh, it can't have been that drastic. I'm like, no, the iPhone said I was not the same person. So I had to take it in, and they had to completely reset it and then recalibrate it for my face had changed so much. So yes, there you go. Talk about changes. That sort of, when you're doing the meditation work, you first you change the energy first, and the very last thing that changes your physical form. And I'd gotten to the point where I changed my physical form so much I was not recognizable. So yes, there you go. And that was sort of, I guess that was sort of the tail end of this entire saga, was me changing my name and then changing physically so much I had to recalibrate all of my devices.
And a new sense of freedom in your life.
Yes, completely new sense of freedom that I have never ever had before, and that was releasing all of that old everything around my upbringing and my parents and everything that you carry with you, and you think, you do a lot of work, even conscientiously do a lot of work. There's still layers that are there, and I would not have been able to release those had I not done it with them alive day in, day out, and consciously done it. This was very conscious on my part. I didn't just sort of wander into it and do what I needed to do. I was very consciously trying to heal all of this. And yes, I am much, much lighter, and even physically much, much lighter and much healthier. My doctor's much happier with me. So yes, that's Yes, it is so incredibly valuable to spend this last time with your loved ones. Yes,
things you find out, things you never knew. You go into emotional depths that
yes.
you usually never have gone into
yes.
before.
Exactly.
That's not always true. Some
right.
people go into, but for me, I found it just was an incredible emotional healing. Living with my father, I got to know him. I got to know
yes.
his stories. I asked him how he met my mother. Wonderful stories,
yes.
too, not just the abusive ones.
Oh, right. Of course, it's not, I didn't want to make it seem all negative. It was actually very positive. Just all aspects. It made them multifaceted as opposed to just the front that they had put up when we were growing up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and everybody has this.
Of course.
Most
yes.
parents don't talk to their children about the difficult times in their lives until you get to be an adult.
Yes.
And even then, they don't open up to you unless you spend more time with them or you're
right.
probing. It's
right.
like, to me, this is a definite advantage because when you
yes.
know your family history, it changes you.
It does. It does.
Because your mind makes wrong conclusions
exactly.
when you don't have the correct information.
Exactly.
So it makes
yes.
such a difference to know what your parents were dealing with, what help they came through their lives, what
yes. Yes.
And then you can see that they pass those down to you.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And of course there's negative stuff, but there's a lot of positive things too. And especially with my father, there were just very interesting habits and that I have, and I had no idea where they came from, and they came from him. Really stupid things like collecting, like we all like collecting. Where my mom was a hoarder, which is like the extreme version of it. So we grew up, there was a whole emotional thing about that. But the collecting, my dad also had that as well. So at the end of his life, little figurines, and he loved his figurines and collect. It's like, oh, that's where I get it from. That's where we all get it from, because we all collect. It's like, why do I have these things? Why am I storing this? And it's like, oh my God, of course we're exactly like our father, which we had never known. I would never know that. I would never know that. And the sense of humor. He had we're Irish background, and definitely the Irish sense of humor, which he would not let through, only glimpses of it when we were very young. But all of that came out at the end of his life. And then also the talent. I mean, he was a very talented trumpeter and was basically self-taught because his parents would not even pay attention to him, or even, that was just nothing. They didn't actually care what happened to him. It's very sad. Which also there's an understanding there of who he was and what came to be and how he lived his life, which is very sad. But underneath that was this tremendous talent. It's like, oh my gosh, we all got that. We all got talent, musical and artistic and in all different forms of the arts. And that comes from him as well. And I would not have known all of this if I had not spent the time, those last 9 months, I had lived with him and seen him interact and interacted with him on a daily basis. Because yes, as you said, if you visit occasionally and then you try to get them to talk, there's going to be this sort of wall. It's like, well, they're not in the mood to talk or something there. But if it just is day in, day out, and it just comes out, you start learning all of this stuff that they would not tell you otherwise. Or they'll suddenly have a memory and just tell you. And that's just invaluable. That is invaluable.
People are so concerned over their careers and being successful and money.
Yes.
But what is really important is your emotional health. And your emotional health, a lot of times, comes from your upbringing. And so it is so valuable for you to really understand your parents, where they came from, what their story was, what they're passing down to you. I can't emphasize it enough. After 45 years of counseling people, it's like if you have a chance to have emotional healing with your loved ones, do it. Because you will regret it for the rest of your life if you don't. It'll affect you negatively.
And it affects you the rest of your life. And I had so many friends that have parents die when they were younger, or lose their moms to cancer younger, and always live the rest of their lives living with regret. If only I had, you know. And also not getting the stories. You don't get the stories of it. It just gives a whole different dimension to your parents' lives, and it also explains a lot of where they were coming from when they made these choices that you see later as, wow, that was just a really choice. Why did you do that to yourself? It's you see then through them telling you about their experiences, like, oh, of course they interpreted it as this. You know, my dad was abused and neglected, so of course his worldview was that, and he tried to instill that in us. And happily, in seeing how miserable they were in high school, I ended up with Gwen in therapy. I was like, I need somebody else. This is not right. You know, and just logically, I remember thinking through in high school, it's like, well, if the world was really that horrible, the suicide rate would be so much higher. This cannot be correct. I do not see people living this way. And yet my father is very stern. This is it. You just survive life, and then death is like this wonderful release. You get to die. Wow, that can't be. This is just not. So anyway, and that's when I started working with you in high school, actually, through a happy series of events, and have worked with you for decades now. But I cannot tell you how important that is. And with very specifically not wanting to carry that baggage through my life. And the final part of releasing that was reconnecting with my parents towards the end, and those bits of baggage and understanding, getting that all together. And now, I'm leading a much happier life. I will have to say it is very successful and very happy, not just successfully, but relationship-wise. We all grow up with our parents' relationship model ingrained in us, whether we like it or not. And having and unlearning that has allowed me to have a wonderful relationship now, and which I've never had before. So yes, what you were saying, success is not just physical success, monetary success. It's inside.
Yes, so I encourage anyone who has the opportunity to be more involved with caring for their loved ones to do it. You may think that it's going to take away from your life, but what you will find is it will give you more life. You will clear away things that are holding you back. You don't even realize how much your emotional baggage from your loved ones is pulling you down. And once you clear that, if you do that intentionally through therapy or taking care of your parents or any other way, it just makes such a huge difference.
Life-changing, truly life-changing difference. Yes.
So I want to thank you, Duke.
Oh, thank
I'm
you.
going to have you back. We're going
yes.
to go deeper into some of these issues.
Yes, there's so many. There's so much more. Yes.
So much more to
Yeah.
do. I so
Okay.
appreciate you opening yourself up to
Yes.
everyone. It
you.
helps everyone to hear the stories because this whole community is dealing with the same issues.
Yes, we are. Every generation deals with it, and it's really important. And yes, I am happy to tell what I've learned in my journey. It's just, yes, it's really important. It's important for everyone.
Okay, so thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank
We will
you.
see you next
Thanks.
episode.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.